proven innocent nearly after 40 years, Ohio man says, "I could have become Barack Obama." The summer sun dipped low over Cleveland, Ohio, casting a warm glow on the cracked sidewalks. 17-year-old Kwame Ajamu, then known as Ronnie Bridgman, sat on his front porch, dreaming of building a future. He was a bright, ambitious teenager, unaware that within hours, his life would be destroyed. On May 19, 1975, Harold Franks, a businessman, was killed outside a small grocery store on Cleveland's east side, where he was delivering money orders. Witnesses claimed that two men beat Franks and threw chemical in his face before one of them shot him twice with a .38 caliber pistol. During the assault, a stray bullet struck Anna Robinson, the wife of the store's owner. The attackers grabbed Frank's briefcase and fled the scene in a green car driven by a third man. The next morning, Kwame's home was stormed by officers. Handcuffed in front of his mother, he was dragged away without explanation. Her desperate pleas were drowned out by the cold clank of shackles. In the eyes of the law, he was already guilty. At the trial, Edward Vernon, a 13-year-old boy, became the prosecution's key witness. Despite the complete lack of physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, Kwame, his brother Ricky Jackson, and their friend Wiley Bridgman were convicted. Kwame, only 17, was sentenced to life in prison, while Ricky and Wiley received capital punishment sentences. Prison became a slow, grinding torment. The days bled into years, defined by the hollow clang of steel doors and the flickering hum of fluorescent lights. Kwame worked in the prison kitchen, keeping his head down to avoid trouble. On rare visits, his sister brought news from the outside world, a world he was beginning to forget. Meanwhile, Wiley Bridgman endured a particularly tragic fate. After 7 years on capital punishment row, his sentence was reduced to life imprisonment, and he was released on parole in 2002. However, less than 18 months later, he was sent back to prison for parole violations. After 3 more years incarcerated, he was released again, only to find himself still haunted by the trauma of wrongful imprisonment. As the years dragged on, hope dimmed for Kwame. He watched fellow inmates age, some losing their sanity. Sometimes, he would sit by the small grated window in his cell, staring at the sliver of sky, wondering if anyone still remembered him. But Edward Vernon, now an adult, was haunted by guilt. In 2001, he confessed that he had lied. With a trembling voice, he revealed he had been coerced by the police and had never witnessed the crime. Yet, despite his confession, the legal system was slow to act. It took 13 more years before the courts listened. Finally, in 2014, after nearly 4 decades of wrongful imprisonment, Kwame Ajamu was exonerated. The judge overturned his conviction, and he walked out of prison into the crisp November air, a free man. Wiley Bridgman, too, was exonerated alongside Kwame and Ricky. However, Wiley's years of imprisonment had taken a devastating toll on his mental health. Just 10 days after his release, he was institutionalized for severe psychiatric issues. The freedom he had waited nearly 40 years for came too late to mend his broken spirit. Tragically, on June 27, 2021, Wiley Bridgman passed away after a long illness. He was 66 years old, crushed with the weight of injustice still lingering over his life, a man who had lost his youth to a prison cell. For Kwame, freedom was bittersweet. The world he returned to was unrecognizable. Technology had transformed daily life, and familiar streets now felt foreign. The mother who had once wept for him was gone, having passed away before seeing him walk free. Though free, Kwame knew he could never reclaim what was stolen from him. Reflecting on his ordeal, he once said, "I could go back to being Ronnie Bridgman, but I'm not." They destroyed him, his dreams, his spirit, everything he believed in. I could have been a lawyer, maybe even Barack Obama. Who knows? But rather than be consumed by bitterness, Kwame chose to fight back. He became an advocate for the wrongly convicted, speaking out against injustice. His voice, once silenced, was now a beacon for others. In 2015, he married Lashawna Jamu, the love of his life, and changed his surname to Ajamu, a Yoruba name meaning he who fights for what is right. His name became a symbol of resilience. A year later, in 2016, Kwame, Ricky, and Wiley were awarded an $18 million settlement for their wrongful convictions, one of the largest in U.S. history. The money could never return the lost years, but it was a recognition of the unimaginable suffering they endured. Though the scars of his ordeal would never fully heal, Kwame Ajamu walked forward with dignity. No longer defined by a prisonid, he carried the weight of injustice with grace, a man who had stared into the void of despair and emerged, not broken, but unyielding.